If God is real, then why not just make himself known to everyone? Wouldn't that be easier? Let's chat.
Glad to be back again.
Yeah,
Another
we're
question.
jumping into a nice, light, easy topic, per usual, right? Yeah, I mean, it's a good question, and one that I've wondered myself, right?
Yeah.
Like, if God is real, then why not just be like, hey, telepathic message to everyone. Hi, by the way, I'm God, and this is how I want you to live life,
Yeah,
right?
right. What have been some of your experiences with this question, either experiencing it personally or having conversations with people about sort of this problem of why is God seemingly so hidden in everybody's lives?
Yeah, especially online, I've gotten this question a lot. People will comment on our videos and be like, "Well, if all of this is true, then
Yeah, right.
like, why is it so secret? Why is it so hidden?" Right?
Right.
And part of me is like, you know what? Fair, right? Like,
Yeah.
I also like having certainty, and I want to know that, like, what I'm doing, like, as my job, as my calling, what I feel like God is asking me to do.
Is it being validated?
Yeah, is it being validated, right?
Right.
And that would be easiest if God was just like, yes, my child, you are doing the right thing.
Yes.
But God doesn't work like that.
Yeah. You're currently on step 42 of 1000 on the handbook.
Right. And so it's tricky, and it's something that I've had to unpack as a Christian and as a pastor, because it is, like I said, like, it's a fair question.
Yeah.
And I think everyone craves that bit of certainty of,
Yeah.
am I doing the right thing? Am I on the right path? If there is a God, then, I do want to follow whatever he has to say,
Yeah.
but there's so many religions out in the world. How do I know which one is the right one? How can I be certain?
Right.
And so I've had to learn to find my certainty in different ways, right? And so for me personally, it's just looking for confirmation, like just kind of little nods that I'm on the right path. When things tend to go easier and tend to flow smoothly, and if I'm like, hey, I want to start this Bible study, and a bunch of people are like, oh, actually, I've had questions about that same topic. Can we all get together and talk about that? I'm like, okay, so something's happening. Everyone's kind of thinking the same thing. Kind of a confirmation for me that I'm on the right path.
Right.
I've also had times where I'm like, hey, I think this would be a cool Bible study, and it's crickets. And I'm like, okay, so maybe that's not where God is leading me right now. And so it's not quite this like big booming telepathic message to everyone, but to me, it is kind of confirmation that, like, okay, I'm headed in the right direction. And while I wish that I had more, when we look at how God works in the Bible, he never really does these big booming telepathic message, like PSA broadcasts to everyone. At most, he'll do it to a small group of people, but most often, I'd say 90% of the time, at a minimum, what he's doing is he's speaking through individual people, and he'll show up in the lives of individual people who then lead God's people as a whole in whatever direction God is leading. And so we see that through Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Moses. We see that with David. We see that with the prophets. We see that most explicitly through Jesus, who is God. And that's kind of like the biggest way that we see God making that big PSA statement of, like, making himself known is through Jesus. And then, but even then, he's only doing his ministry for about 3 years, and then sends his apostles to go and spread the word. And so it's always kind of God working through people, and that's the role of the church, is to continue to spread that message.
Yeah.
But I can also see why that's frustrating.
Yeah. And, the one thing that as I'm listening to you describe your experience, the one thing that I think stands out, though, is that while you are first to admit that you wish sometimes it can be more clear, louder validations, but in your heart, you're faithful, and you're allowing this process to take place as you continue to sort of strain and listen and try to hear from God. And I think where I want to start with this, as we start with all of these questions, is a lot of times we've already established this in previous conversations that people struggle through this journey. It's not meant to be easy. But a lot of times um, we ask rational questions that are coming from actual emotional places
Right.
because we're trying to mask the reality that we're struggling with something. And so with a lot of these questions, we have to look sometimes at the questioner and not the actual answer first.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times people ask questions and they're loaded with priors, meaning preconceived notions or some predispositions, right? When we ask a question like, hey, how come God chooses to remain hidden? Or how come God refuses to reveal himself to me even though I've been so faithful? When you even take a look at how those questions are framed, when you use the word remain hidden or refuse to reveal, there's already a negative connotation. Like, he knows what he's doing. He could reveal himself to me, but he's choosing to intentionally hide from me.
Yeah.
And I know we talked about this like a few weeks ago as we were brainstorming this, but it's like if I was hosting a party and I invited you and you didn't show up, the next day I came to you and said, hey, Matt, I noticed you were inconspicuously missing from the party. So tell me, was it because you were just lazy or that I'm not a priority for you?
Right.
You probably wouldn't just dive into answering the logistics of the question. You'd immediately sense that, well, so there's something else going on.
Yeah.
For him to ask me this loaded question in this way, I'm choosing between two negatives.
Right.
So clearly he's feeling a certain type of way for me missing the party. And there might be some like preconceived things there to address through. It's not about the party, it's about my perspective of who you are.
Right.
Right. And so when you frame a question like, assuming that God is hiding from you, it's tough to find anything that's going to help you from a rational perspective because it's coming from an emotional place. So I want to set that there so that as people listen through to this podcast, they can honestly examine for themselves, whether you're a believer or you're a Christian who's struggling with the same thing, have I already concluded in my heart that God is refusing to reveal himself to me?
Yeah.
Or could it be that something in me is not allowing me to tap into his frequency?
Yeah. It's very similar to what we talked about last time. Like you have to have that willingness to like see the signs, right? To see the little nods, the subtle things, because God doesn't speak in these big booming things,
right?
Because then what would be the point of having faith in a consistent way, a persistent way that's believing that God is guiding us even when we're not clued into the whole plan.
Right. And there might be some tangible reasons for that. And I wanted to explore that in this conversation.
Yeah.
And just, again, like we usually do, offer people some alternative perspectives so that when they wrestle with this, they're not having horse blinders on and barreling down one road, that it sort of opens up the aperture so that they can think about things in different perspectives. So I want to frame this in sort of like 3 categories of why when we communicate, there are limitations even among human beings and even among nature itself, why there's certain levels of communication that is required to be understood and also required to then understand the bigger picture. So we as human beings, I would say, I want to focus on, just for the sake of this conversation and for brevity, let's focus on 3 of these limitations. I'll call them as the first topic is more like our physical and mental limitation in terms of being able to process information as human beings. The second would be like our social limitations as a society, like how much can society handle in terms of a people group. And then last but not least, more spiritually, it's about like our spiritual and moral limitations. So what do I mean by physical and mental limitations, and what does that have to do with anything? So like, I think we all agree that we exist in a reality. It's very rich, very complex, but it's very layered. And human beings, we may take this for granted because we're so comfortable walking around in our skin that we don't realize we have very limited sensory to the reality around us.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things that we cannot sense. So one of the easy examples is like, even if you take something as simple as like a bee, biologists have studied that bees see certain UV rays that humans can't see. In fact, those UV rays are so prominent to bees that it actually acts like airport runway light landing gear. And it literally tells them, here's the flower that you can land on. Here is the landing path, because that's ready to be pollinated.
That's cool. It reminds me of like the mantis shrimp, right?
Yeah.
Like can see like different colors, like has more rods and cones in its eyes, and so can see a whole like broader color spectrum than we can.
Human beings, our eyes are naturally developed to filter out the UV rays, because as pretty as that might be for us, and we may enjoy such a vivid, colorful visual spectrum, we probably go blind by the age of 5 because UV rays are harmful for us, right? Same thing. If you think of like, the smell of a canine, or a great white shark can smell a drop of blood in the ocean from a mile away. A canine can hear frequencies that are imperceptible to humans. Now imagine if we just said, you know what, remove the filters, let me access everything. Our brains would probably be paralyzed with sensory overload. We couldn't function with that much, and it's for good reason, right? So right there and there, like we see that there are aspects of our physical reality that we can't access, but it doesn't mean it's not there. Same thing with like the mental limitation. In the 1500s, before like Copernicus and Newton came along, we had no idea what the solar system was. We thought the Earth was a flat disk and the sun revolved around us, right? And so just because we didn't understand and can grasp the physical universe around us mentally, because we didn't have the intelligence or the acumen to do it, everything still existed, right? It wasn't until Newton came along to show us what gravity was that we understood the concept of it. But gravity was there regardless of whether or not we could perceive it, right? It's there before humans. It's there, right? It's here right now as we're sitting on the couch, and it'll be there long after we're gone. And so what it tells me is that objective truth is impartial to one's ability to perceive it, right? So elusiveness doesn't necessarily mean or equate to non-existence. It's just that sometimes it's imperceptible to us, right? So when you think about God, and it's just this purest form of the question, Solomon himself, wisest man in the Bible, said, like, how can you hope that these temples can contain him, made by the hands of men, when even the heavens can't contain him, right? And another example in the Bible I think of is like when Moses asked God to, Moses only asked God 2 things. First one was, I think he wanted to see God or see his face, and God said no, because if you see my face, it's going to destroy you. So there's hints there that God is this transcendent being that exists outside of our space-time continuum. We're just 3-dimensional creatures in time, bound by this 4th linear dimension in time. God, imagine, is this omega-level 10-dimensional being. And like at a certain point, we have to realize that God can't just, like you said, reveal himself to us. In fact, he might have to mute himself for us, because if we were to experience him in his full glory, like, I think our heads would just explode. Right? So I think right off the bat, we have to understand that reality exists around us in many different layers. And just because we can't access it, it doesn't mean that it's less true or that somehow it's less important. We just we haven't had the ability to tune into that frequency just yet.
And I think that's a very important part of God's hiddenness is what you were kind of alluding to with Moses. If God revealed his full presence to Moses, he wouldn't be able to handle it. Right? God shows Moses his back, and then Moses starts glowing. And Moses comes down from Mount Sinai, and all of Israel is like, why is Moses glowing? This is freaking us out. And so even just that amount of God's presence, of not even being able to see him, but just like a piece of him, the shadow of him, transformed Moses in a way that we really only see that time in the Bible until we get to Jesus
Right.
later.
Right.
But then after that, we get story after story after story of rituals of God saying, you need to be totally and completely sanctified and clean and atoned for all of the things that you have done, ritually pure, so that you can enter into the tent that I'm dwelling in. And the high priest would go into the most holy place where they have the Ark of the Covenant, and they would tie a rope around him just in case they missed a step in these purification processes.
Yank it back out.
Yeah. Well, because if he died in there by
Yeah.
being in the presence of God and being impure,
Right.
then how are they going to get him out?
Yeah.
Right. And so they would have to like pull him back out with a
Right.
rope. And we see time and time again, story after story, of people not following these rules and not giving the respect that God deserves, that God's presence deserves, and they are struck down dead immediately. And it's like, well, how could God do this? That seems unfair. And he's laid out his instructions very clearly of why the people should not do this, because merely being in his presence with a soul, a presence that is unclean or impure, in his pure and clean presence, just completely wipes away like an immune system wiping out bacteria.
Right.
It's just in its nature.
Right.
Right. Because God is holy and perfect. And so the fact that we're like, well, why doesn't God just reveal himself to everyone? It's like, well, actually, that might not be the best.
There's a lot more
thing.
precursors that have to happen if you truly want to just like have a cup of coffee with him.
Right.
And so I know the people who are listening are probably already thinking this. It's like, all right, well, I mean, but he's God, so he can do whatever he wants, right? So why not just come in a form that's muted enough where we can all just see it, right? Why not reveal yourself in a very mundane way so that it wouldn't fry our eyeballs or fry our brains, right? And so we move on to like the societal limitation, because I think people take for granted the fact that, well, he has already done that in the form of Jesus.
Yeah.
And he did miracles for 3 years, and the people back then who were arguably exponentially more religious than we are today brutally tortured him, crucified him, and murdered him.
Yep.
So to say that, well, just dumb yourself down a little bit, and we're mature enough to understand if you just reveal yourself to us. Well, clearly human history has already proven otherwise, because we sacrificed the one person who did all the miracles in front of hundreds of people for 3 years, and that wasn't enough, and we crucified him anyways. And so think about, there's sort of, when I hear that, there is a bit of a naiveness that I don't think people fully spend enough time to wrestle with when posing this question. Imagine the chaos that might ensue if God were to reveal himself in this, like you said, this broad PSA, public service announcement broadcasting way.
Yeah.
Do we really think, or are we really gullible enough to think that everybody who sees this vision or image would just drop everything they're doing, repent, take up the cross, and overnight we're going to have some perfect utopian society? I would argue probably the opposite would happen.
Yeah.
There would be mass chaos and panic. There will be people who will take advantage of the situation and incite even further panic and division. And I credit a lot of my atheist friends, I credit a lot of them, because they're very honest when I ask them this question, and I appreciate their honesty. When I asked them, if Jesus revealed himself to you right now, like if he just came down in the form of a glowing person next to you, right here as we speak, would you change your mind and would you follow him? And, well, I have to think about it, right?
Yeah.
And I go, that right there, that hesitation is exactly why he doesn't do it.
Right.
Because if he does all of that and you still have to sleep on it, then perhaps God in his wisdom understands that mass broadcasting on a PSA system on the mountaintops to everybody in the world may not actually be the best recipe or the best method for widespread change. Perhaps the gentle nudges like you talked about, or the little whispers in our heart, or having a relationship with every individual person who's willing to
Mm-hmm.
on earth simultaneously and working within us through our tiny revelations of our
Mm-hmm.
self-examination, perhaps he already knows that that is in fact the best way to
Yeah.
incite widespread change.
Yeah, and it's not just a religious thing; it's also a psychological thing.
Right.
It's called the backfire effect.
Mm-hmm.
That when someone is presented with reasonable and rational information that totally obliterates the way that like they saw their worldview,
Mm-hmm.
they actually get more cemented in that worldview
Mm-hmm.
because it's just coming on so strong
It's too strong.
that
Yep.
it's too much change all at once,
Yeah.
and it's like, well, okay, I'm going to hold on to what I believe even tighter,
Yeah.
even if I've been proven wrong about that
Yeah,
thing.
it shatters their sense of reality and identity as a person,
Mhm.
right? Not everybody's going to be able to respond to that or handle that kind of premonition.
Right.
Right.
And so God's not trying to obliterate everyone's worldview.
Yeah.
He specifically shows up as a person through Jesus, and then spreads through word of mouth
Mm-hmm.
everything that has happened in those 3 years. And then it's through the church, through people, that begins to spread, and through relationship. And so the way that we as Christians believe that the gospel is to be spread
Right.
is through relationship, person to person. And even when we get online as Christians and we try to use apologetics as a sword rather than a shield
Mm-hmm.
to say, like, this is what you should be believing, it triggers that backfire effect. Because it's like, okay, well, you're coming on really strong.
Yeah.
I can tell that you just don't like what I believe,
Right.
and you're just trying to convince me that I'm wrong,
Right.
rather than actually understanding where I'm coming from and having a dialogue.
Yeah.
And I think what a lot of Christians miss is the fact that that dialogue, that back and forth, that relationship is actually what's important.
That's the most
And-
important part. Yeah.
And it's not that we're supposed to debate people into the kingdom of heaven, because that doesn't work,
Mm-hmm.
right? What we're supposed to do is build a relationship and present what God has done in our life, present the facts as we know and believe them.
Right.
And then it's up to the individual that we're talking with whether they want to pick that up or not.
Yeah. And I think people see that it should be common knowledge. Like in the dating world, if you're trying to pursue someone,
Mm-hmm.
you wouldn't abduct them, tie them to a chair,
Mhm.
and show them a 3-hour montage of all the sweet things you did for them
Mm-hmm.
in mass,
Right, right.
and then go, do you have enough evidence now to love me back? Because clearly,
Yeah, here's my
this is who
PowerPoint presentation.
here's my PowerPoint presentation.
Yeah.
We all that's absurd.
Yeah.
People would never do that because
Mhm.
we know that's not how relationship and love works. We've
Yeah.
talked about love ad nauseum, about how love has to be freely chosen and given.
Mm-hmm.
In the same time, God's not going to manifest himself to coerce you into loving him,
Mhm.
because that would defeat the purpose of giving us the free will to choose to love him in the first place.
Right.
He wouldn't undermine his own providence like that.
Yeah.
So we kind of moved to then, okay, well then, if he can't do broadcasting
Mm-hmm.
and he has to do it in his own way, fine,
Mm-hmm.
I will concede that. But why can't he just appear to me? Why can't
Mhm.
I have my own personal vision? Why
Mhm.
can't I? Why can't God be there
Mhm.
when I ask him to be? Why can't he prove it in this way when
Mhm.
I ask him to be?
Mm-hmm.
And it gets to that moral limitation
Mhm.
where, sometimes, as the younger gen would say, sometimes we get caught up too much in our own feels,
Mhm.
right? Like if I'm this egotistical person, if I have this pride and I'm haughty and I demand God to reveal himself to me on my own terms,
Mm-hmm.
only two things could possibly happen. One is he does it and it shatters my reality, as we talked about,
Mm-hmm.
and it hurts me more actually
Mhm.
with the backfire effect,
Mm-hmm.
or he caters and only perpetuates my ego more further,
Yeah.
right? Because if I demand, God, I will only think you're real if you reveal yourself to me in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Mm-hmm.
And if he does it, then he's not like. I think we're missing the point of the story,
Yeah.
right? To me, what I would say is, has it ever occurred to us that God is actually broadcasting on a certain frequency that's been open for this entire time.
Mm-hmm.
But in our own ego and arrogance and pride,
Mm-hmm.
we've so convoluted the signal that we forgot how to tune our dials
Yeah.
to channel into his frequency, right? The example that we talked about when we were previewing this was, it's like God asks you to pack a bag for this journey with him,
Mm-hmm.
and he actually says, the catch is,
Mm-hmm.
I don't need you to bring anything.
Mm-hmm.
Just leave the empty bag for me,
Mm-hmm.
because that's all you're ever going to need, right? God is infinitely holy. He cannot be shared,
Mm-hmm.
but he is all the sustenance that we need.
Mm-hmm.
And then meanwhile, we just keep in our own defiance or arrogance or pride or know-how.
Mm-hmm.
We go, well, surely I need my devices and my cell phone, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
going to need extra clothes and
Mm-hmm.
food and provisions.
Mm-hmm.
And we keep taking liberties of stuffing that bag
Yeah.
with all the things that we think that we're going to need because, we know better than God, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And then we go, okay, God, hop in. And there's
Mhm.
like a little crevice left. And then we act surprised and offended when we don't get a response.
Right.
And he's looking at us like, I thought I told you to bring an empty bag.
Yeah.
I can't fit in there
Mm-hmm.
because you filled it with junk that you don't need, that you
Right.
can't take to where I'm trying to take you.
Yeah.
And so until I'll wait, like a patient parent will,
Mm-hmm.
I'll wait here until you get your act together and you empty out that bag, like I told you,
Mm-hmm.
and just follow my simple instruction.
Mm-hmm.
And then here we are going like, well, I'm all packed for the bag, and he's refusing to reveal himself to me, and he's choosing to remain hidden.
Mm-hmm.
In our own arrogance and pride, we can't see the forest through the trees, right?
Yeah. And this isn't even just like an atheist or agnostic or non-Christian problem, right? This is a problem for Christians as well. I see it all the time when people are like, yeah, like I believe this, I'm convinced, but I'm not hearing from God. I don't know what God wants for my life. I'm not sensing his direction. Like I'm praying, I'm not hearing anything back. But at the same time, it's like they have different baggage as well. It's like sometimes, often, good intentioned baggage trying to have the correct theology and like same thing of like I expect God to show up in these ways, and it's like, oh well, I think God would want me to pack this. I think God would want me to pack this as well.
Right.
And so it's still filling up the bag, even though it's not like I'm expecting God to show up in this way. I want God to meet me on my terms.
Yeah.
But in a roundabout way, it's still, I want God to meet me on my terms because he's going to fit into this theological framework that I've already developed.
If we are the captain of our own boat and we've determined already ourselves what I need to bring in order to reach heaven, then we've effectively become the God of our own lives. And if you're the God of your own life, then unfortunately, you don't need a savior anymore.
Right.
And so I think like we're contradicting ourselves because we can't see past, like you said, it's all good intentioned. Sometimes your bag is filled with very vital and necessary elements to survive. But by you packing that in contradiction to what God told you to pack, which was nothing, you're essentially saying that I know better and that I'm going to pack other things that even though God didn't tell me, I think I know what's best for myself outside of what God has instructed me to do.
Yeah.
And we don't realize that by doing that, we are then drowning out the frequency by which he's trying to communicate with us.
Yeah.
Because we have to unpack all of that in order to be able to tune our dial back to what he's broadcasting.
Yeah. Yeah. Two quick Bible stories that are kind of in line with this. I mean, Jesus tells his disciples, like, you're blessed because you get to see me doing this work right here. But how much more blessed are those who will believe just based off of the evidence of what's happened and the word of mouth and haven't actually seen me? And so Jesus acknowledges, like, yeah, I'm not here to show up to everyone. And hey, kudos to those of you who are joining in on this after the fact, 2,000 years later, because all you've heard is the word of mouth and the stories. And I mean, we could dive into the historical evidence of like there was a Jesus of Nazareth, and we have eyewitness testimonies. Unfortunately, there's no Instagram or TikTok of the time where people are like, yo, check out what Jesus did, right? And so we don't have that type of evidence, but we have the strongest evidence of ancient times, which
Mm-hmm.
is many eyewitnesses to go off of. But we have to go based off of that evidence, unfortunately, right? We don't have our own personal Jesus who's just popping up and saying hi and
Yeah.
doing some miracles, right? And so Jesus says you'll be blessed, especially when you don't get to see me literally here in front of you. The other story is from the book of Judges, and it's this judge who's kind of like a religious political leader, kind of upholds some laws, leads the people, might be a military leader. Those are who the judges were. Gideon is a not so faithful judge. And so he puts God to the test, and he's like, God, if this is what you want for me, then I'm going to put this blanket out here. And tonight I want it to be dry everywhere, but I want the blanket to be wet. And God does it. And then a different night, that may have been before or after, I might be flipping it. But then he says, God, I just really, really want to be sure. Can you make the blanket dry and everything else around it wet? And God does it. And even still after that, Gideon is kind of like a wishy-washy, I don't really know if I trust that God is going to lead us, because he's like a military leader going into battle. He's super anxious about everything that's going to happen. And if you just look at the blanket narrative, it's like, wow, look, God is showing up for Gideon, and he's making his presence known. I wish he could do that for us. When you zoom out just a little bit in the broader narrative, it's like, oh, actually, Gideon is not faithful at all. He's super skeptical. He's not actually trusting what God is saying. God has to repeat himself over and over and over again, and it makes things much harder for Gideon. And when you zoom out even further, Gideon is a part of a pattern in these judges where actually these kind of best of the best religious leaders that are leading the people of Israel are actually in a downward spiral of getting less and less faithful and being worse and worse leaders over time, until all of Israel just begins to fall apart and everyone is plunged into chaos before they're finally like, okay, we want a king to unite us all. And that continues into the tragedy of the kingdom of Israel. But I think we often want to be that Gideon figure and not what Jesus is saying, to be the blessed person who believes even though we haven't seen.
Yeah, and I'll close with this. I'm reminded because and again we were talking about this as well, as I'm reminded of what Lee Strobel said. So he's the famous Harvard lawyer and journalist who was an atheist, and his wife became Christian. And his story is that he was so heartbroken because he was like, I'm going to have to divorce this lady because I can't be married to a Christian. Like, think of all of the awkward conversations we're going to have as a couple from now on.
Yeah.
And so in a moment of panic, he realizes, like, wait a minute, I'm a Harvard-educated lawyer and a journalist. This is what I do. He goes and has this amazing journey of going on a 2-year crusade to prove factually, using law practices and journalistic practices, that Jesus was not real and the resurrection never happened. And after 2 years, he was inundated with so much evidence to the contrary that not only did he become a Christian, he is now like a leading pastor at some place in the U.S. And I'll never forget when he was sharing his testimony. He's like, even the best lawyers, after 2 years of seeing this much evidence, you'd be lying to yourself if you would still not come to a conclusion. And at that point in time, if presented with all of the evidence as strong as we have for the account of Jesus and who he was and what he died for, at that point, it doesn't really matter anymore whether you believe or not. It just purely, if you still don't accept it, it just purely proves that no amount of evidence would ever convince you.
Right.
And so that gets back to our own ego, is that we've already made a decision and we're trying to back into that decision by confirmation bias and justifying our position, as opposed to truly being a truth seeker, which is to empty our minds and our hearts free of bias and look at the evidence and struggle with the journey, wrestle with the stories,
Mm-hmm.
and truly try to allow ourselves to have a conversation internally
Mm-hmm.
about what we think. So, just like with every other series that we've done, this conversation, we present some alternative perspectives to help people think through
Mm-hmm.
possible options
Mm-hmm.
or other perspectives from things that they may not have considered.
Mm-hmm.
And I hope that we always challenge them to drop your preconceived notions,
Mm-hmm.
set aside all the swords
Mm-hmm.
and whatever weapons you might have or defensive walls you might have up,
Mm-hmm.
and allow yourself to truly think about this question in a emotional and rational and any kind of which way,
Mm-hmm.
and invite God to reveal himself, because maybe that's the one thing that hasn't happened yet, is you haven't actually given him the invitation to come and speak to you,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe just be amazed at how things might be different if you earnestly and honestly invite him to communicate with you in only the way that he knows how, that's personally tailored for you.